Toronto FC also making several moves in this transfer window. Of course, they brought in Djordje Mihailovic. We talked about him on an earlier show, and they made the shrewd move to bring in Jules-Anthony Vilsaint from Montreal in a trade with Matty Longstaff going the other way. And Vilsaint scores on, I think it was his third touch in a Toronto kit, and seems like a signing that is going to go well. They've also reportedly added midfielder Jose Cifuentes, who returns to MLS after signing with LAFC, according to Tom Bogert. And I've heard that they're close to a defender, a Canadian center back as well, that they would be spending a chunk of that GAM that they've accumulated through several other transfers. And of course, they are also got rid of Djordje Flores. But of the Canadian center backs, there's some names in MLS that I think they could really take a look at. I don't have more than that, but it's been a busy summer for Toronto FC, Brendan.
Yeah, it has been a busy summer. Are you perhaps thinking about someone who would rhyme with Lamal Tiller?
I think he would probably be a good player.
Might slot in. Does that sound like it? Anyone named Lamal?
Kyle Piebert wouldn't be too bad either. His St. Louis has struggled this year. I'm sure he'd love to get out there and get to Canada.
Yeah, good point. That's someone who I thought would, put himself. I really thought that Kyle Hebert would be more of a regular and a star, like at the start of that their first season, inaugural season. He worked his way into the Canada camp. I thought we'd be talking about him as a transfer target to Europe, and maybe that might still be the case. But that could be a good transfer move to Toronto if Jason Hernandez and company are looking at that. It's nice to see Toronto FC keeping very busy. They're stacking a lot of GAM that they have to use this year, a lot of that GAM. So they're clearly gonna make some moves, and I think that there's a lot of interesting options out there for them. And I like a bit of the business, and I think it's Djordje Flores is going to leave a bigger hole immediately than I think a lot of people realize. He was one player that was kind of also easily criticized, but last season under John Herdman and I would argue in this season, like he helped prevent a lot of goals. He broke up and made the midfield, very difficult to get through. And he covered for the center backs a lot. Rosted and Long would put themselves in difficult positions, and Djordje Flores covered a lot of ground that they really needed, I think. So I think a lot of that will now fall on Alonso Cuello and Jonathan Osorio, at least for now. But we'll see what these other moves bring. And Cifuentes was pretty good in LA. I'd like to see what he does in red for TFC. So they're definitely very active, and they want to put themselves as far away from the bottom of the cellar in the Eastern Conference as possible. And they've been criticized, management, for earlier in the year for sitting on their hands and not doing enough. And they're pretty active right now. So whether they can be as successful as Vancouver, only time will tell. But at least TFC's making moves.
For the first time in a while, I think Toronto FC have cobbled together some sort of identity with their transfer plan. And I think that's absolutely massive, because we've talked about it in the past. There's just too many holes trying to be plugged when the foundation was a mess, and that they were able to clear out the foundation. Bernardeschi, Insigne, ciao, arrivederci, like Brendan said. That's step one. Then you have all this flexibility with your DPs. You bring in Djordje Mihailovic, not too old, in his prime, knows the league. Okay, good first step. All of a sudden you're looking around at a Jules-Anthony Vilsaint, undervalued guy with good underlying numbers, who's young and domestic. Okay, I really like that move. And I said that even before he scored, by the way. I think I put out an article that morning saying why I like that move for Toronto. He goes out, scores, makes me look good, keep scoring for that, I guess. And then boom, in the next few days, Jose Cifuentes. Like, look, you're right, Brendan. Djordje Flores, I think, was a good piece for Toronto, because I've said for years they've never replaced Michael Bradley, and I don't think Flores was the Michael Bradley replacement, but he would at least fill that gap a bit more than some of the past names they've had. At the same time, he's 29 and he's good. He's not great. To bring in a guy like Jose Cifuentes, who's 26, and Cifuentes was great in MLS. We'll see if he was great. If his greatness was because that LAFC team was so good that, man, how many midfielders have looked great in that system? Like Latif Blessing, Marc-Anthony Kaye, Edward Atuesta. Now we're starting to seeing it with Mathieu Chouanier. But still, Cifuentes at least has that potential. Okay, that's another exciting move. Man, if they can get a Canadian defender, of the names that are out there, like Kyle Hebert would be a clear upgrade for a team that needs defenders. Kamal Miller would be a fantastic pickup to bring him home. Heck, if you even bring in a guy like Lucas McNaughton back to TFC, he knows the club and is solid. Like, there's, okay, Zach McGraw maybe less of an upgrade, but still there's good Canadian center backs out there. There's an identity. There's young guys. They're chasing good, undervalued domestic talent. And they're also starting to target the big holes like the DPs and U22s with the right players. I like it a lot. So hopefully this is the start for Toronto, because I've said there's room for them to go out and chase a star again. I think that it would be cool to see them do that, because I really think it fits the Toronto model. But I like that they're building a team now. And if they can build a really good team that come next summer, they're maybe sixth, fifth in the Eastern Conference, and they bring a star on top of that, boom. And I think they've kind of realized that, they're not putting the cart before the horse like they've had in the last few years. And I think that's exciting from a Toronto FC perspective for any fans of that club out there.